Bears on 3. 1, 2, Bear!
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of The Bear Season 4. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek. When we last left off with The Bear Season 3, the show was really focused on the plight of high-end restaurants like The Bear. There was a closing dinner forever restaurant, which was run by Chef Terry, played by Olivia Colman. There was a chef named Adam Shapiro who had offered to bring Sid on board a new restaurant venture he's trying to build, but Sid was undecided as of the end of Season 3. The staff of The Bear was waiting for the result of a Chicago Tribune review, and Carmy in general was trying to figure out whether he'd be able to balance running a restaurant with maintaining his family and romantic relationships. So that was where we left off with Season 3. Season 4 picks up basically right where we left off, like days after that. There are 10 episodes. We've seen all 10 of them. And we're going to start with our overall thoughts on the show before we share our favorite episode of the season. Patrick Klepek, I usually open with you, but you know what? I'm going to open this week and say,
yes, chef.
and say I was really not a fan of Season 3, as people who listen to this podcast know. And not only was I, usually if I don't like something, I'm just kind of like mildly not a fan, or I mildly dislike it, or whatever. But I kind of almost actively hated Season 3 because I felt like it was such a spinning its wheels season that refused to make any difficult decisions about what to do with any of its storylines or with any of its characters. And I just kind of found that insulting to like stretch out literally almost nothing happening over the course of that many episodes. And so I was really kind of potentially have my knives out for Season 4. And was going in with a very skeptical eye. Now, I just want to say to start with, I am pleased to say Season 4 in general is way better than Season 3. Like, I feel like the creator, Christopher Storer, has learned a lot from the reaction to Season 3, which I think was more mixed than the reaction to Seasons 1 and 2. And not only that, but in my opinion, The Bear is explicitly about the making of The Bear, right? Like, I think this show is a show that is about the making of itself, because if you think about it, this is a show that was originally supposed to be kind of a middle or was positioned almost as a middle brow comedy on Hulu. And we're this like high-end chef guy is coming into this restaurant, this beef restaurant, and trying to like jazz it up a little bit. And fish out of water, haha, like look at how their cultures clash. Like, go back and look at some of those episodes from Season 1, and it's kind of this very like affable sitcom almost. And then Season 2 took it to new heights, and it's like we're doing an entire episode that's set in one that's going to take place in real time and do this, like he branched out and tried a bunch of new interesting things, and many of them worked in Season 2, and many of them were really, really incredible. And the show had all this acclaim and Emmys and awards, and just like a lot of conversation online about it. And then you get to Season 3, and I think the show is struggling with what it wants to be, right? What does the show want to be? What kind of show does it want to be? Season 3 is very exploratory. Let's try this, but not with any firm idea that it's going to work or that it's even good. And also, in my opinion, it got really up its own ass in Season 3. And you spoke very eloquently about this when we reviewed it. Go back and listen to or watch our review of like, the poor plight of these like high-end chefs. And it's like, I think there's other issues in the cooking world that we need to like be aware of here. And so Season 3 was kind of like, just like lost its way. And Season 4, as the characters in the show are dealing with the review of their restaurant, where the reviewer says, hey, it's too inconsistent. You don't know what you're doing. Commit to a path, please. A reviewer that has eaten at their restaurant 3 separate times, which the show makes very clear multiple times. It's 3 separate times, just as there have been 3 seasons of the show. This is a show that's like, okay, we have to commit to a path. We have to like choose a lane. And I think it does. I think it's like this season, whether you like it or don't like it, it's very consistent, right? Like it's very like every episode is kind of the same aesthetic. It's kind of the same milieu. most of the show takes place in like conversations between two people in like a two shot where you can see both of them. And although sometimes it's like super close, tight, close up, right? Like that's how the show operates. Like you're watching these two people like have a lengthy conversation with like a lot of awkward, pregnant pauses. It's just the kind of language of the show, and that's most of the season. There's a couple of things that venture off to other things.
How else do you make a season of television every single year unless that's right. How you end up framing it?
Right. But this season, I think, is way better than season 3 for a couple reasons. Number one, stuff happens.
That's helpful.
I know that sounds basic, but plot developments occur. Really, relationships are moved along, and that is a big plus. But I also sense, it's a show about like the creator grappling with what it's like to make a show, and trying not to be too swept away by like pursuing acclaim, right? Pursuing the Michelin star, pursuing the Emmys, and trying to like make something good in spite of that. Having these competing desires of, wanting to make a show that's broadly appealing, but also one that kind of is more high-minded than that. It's all there. It feels like making the show is a struggle, and the show itself is about a struggle. So I didn't love season 4, but I liked it, and I thought it was way better than season 3. Thanks for listening to me talk for so long. Patrick Klepek, what did you think of The Bear season 4?
I really liked this season, but I'm sort of of two minds of the show, which is that I think when The Bear premiered, and especially its first two seasons, and I think part of the backlash and criticism of the first season, other than like it getting out, sort of ahead of itself conceptually, and taking swings that just didn't land, was also, I think, speaking to The Bear always had sort of a mini series quality to it, which is like, we're going to burn bright and burn fast, but there is just nothing about this that suggests this should be a 10 season show. Like it's like, put aside the like growing popularity of the actors involved. It's just like, how would you get to like, eventually this is just going to either burn out, or you should like tell a story about the bear and the beef and like this family and its struggles. And at some point you got to put a period or an ellipses on it and just say like, and then the story has come to an end. We've told, our window into it. This season, for the first time, feels like part of the goal was to conceptualize what is a world of the bear where you could imagine it's still going 5 seasons from now. That was difficult for me to imagine in seasons 1 and 2, and was very difficult to imagine season 3. But season 4 very much feels like it sands down, for better or worse, like a bunch of rough edges, like between the characters, gives like clear sort of conflicts that can have like a season ending resolution while also neatly handing off to the next one. And like we've seen, like there's something about the bear, and FX has done this before. Like I look at like FX and Showtime as networks that did like prestige, like the aesthetics of prestige television, but with the serialized nature of like a network television show that suddenly you look at that and go like, that was on for 12 seasons. Like Shameless did this. Like Shameless was like really acclaimed and beloved, not quite to the extent of The Bear, but like that kind of show, or a Dexter type of show where it's like, hot damn, like this is great. And then you kind of fall off it and you look back and you go, I cannot believe they made that for 10 years. And The Bear strikes me as a show trying to figure out like, what is the version of this show that we could keep doing without everything like falling apart. And I got to the end of season 4, which again, I did quite like. Part of that is just in reaction to actively disliking season 3, but also like, okay, this doesn't feel like it's swinging for the fences in the same way, but also I can understand how these characters could stick around, have enough conflicts and enough things to do that this show could stick around for another 5 years. And would it necessarily be getting all the Emmys that it was before? Probably not, because it doesn't seem like it's even swinging for that, except in some rare instances like the final episode of the season that, I'm sure we'll talk about, in which it suddenly feels like, oh shit, we're going for it again. Like this feels like some season 1, season 2, heat of The Bear. But it feels like a much more normal TV show. And I can imagine for some people, maybe that's where you get off and it's like, I don't like, this isn't enough for me. Like the highs of season 1 and 2 are not here, but I love these characters. I love this family. I really liked the thematic like pitch of season 4, which is basically like you should talk about your feelings and the conflicts you've had with others until it's too late for you to articulate them to others. And there's almost a little Saturday morning cartoonish nature to how often they're able to have those conversations. Like, oh, everyone's it's an airing of grievances
Right.
this season on the Bear that a little bit got a little formulaic, but I don't know. It touched me. I found myself very swept in it. So I liked this season, but I was left with kind of an interesting feeling, which was that I don't think it's ever going to try or really achieve the highs of season 1 and 2. Because if you're going to keep making this show for years to come, you just can't swing that big, especially when you're making them year over year. So I think I'm higher on it than you were, but I wonder if some of your response to it is because of what I perceive to be a bit of sanding off of the edges, creatively, like being a little more formulaic and relying on your relationships with the characters and these terrific actors to carry the season forward.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is still one of the best looking shows on television. It has a great soundtrack, and the actors are great, and you believe the relationship they have with each other. They have great chemistry. You really feel for them. Your heart goes out to them when they're really struggling. And so there's a lot of things I do like about the show. I guess the only issue I really had with this season was Sid's arc. By the time she actually decides what to do, and so I guess we should say we're spoiling now season 4 of The Bear. She decides what to do, and kind of, in my opinion, the show doesn't really deal with that decision in a very emotionally satisfying way.
A braver show has her leaving the Bear. A more formulaic show that understands its strengths and the best way to keep them together and to keep people in the same room has Sid not leaving. Now, I think they save a bit of it with how spectacular that final episode and conversation is, but it's almost a magic trick to make you forget that it's like the one subplot that they're spinning their wheels on, where it really feels like the show wants to arrive. Like the momentum of the show feels like it's taking Sid away, but the show is like, no, and we're going to make sure she stays here. At least that was kind of how I felt about it.
And there's some great acting by all the performers in the final episode, but like even that, I mean, Sid just gets completely sidelined in that conversation. And
I'm going to leave this room. No, you stay here. Why?
Right.
Because people like it when Sid's in the show.
Right. So it's just, that's the one thing that I'm like, okay, first of all, props to you. You at least dealt with it, unlike last season when you kind of left it as a cliffhanger. And so, I mean, it took them freaking 7 to 8 episodes or 8 episodes to actually deal with it.
Well, it feels like they had the idea for where they wanted the season to end, and then were just forced as a result of that to just like, it felt like dealing with a bad decision made in the previous season. That's like, we know the solution to it or the one we want to arrive at.
Right.
And instead we're gonna have to string the audience along to get to the catharsis moment at the end of the season. Like
it was
I can't
way too long. They stretched that plot line way too long and for not enough emotional payoff, in my opinion. Now, but that's really the main issue I had. Everything else I think is like pretty reasonable. And the other thing is also like Marcus becoming like the big best new chef. It feels like it comes out of nowhere a little bit, and also like the show never deals with any, like there's no, I guess we'll probably deal with it next season of like what the aftermath of that is, because I feel like I want to know what Marcus's reaction is and what other people's reaction is to that, but they never really deal with it because we have to get to this big confrontation in episode 10. Now, the awkward thing about the show is that the 3 actors that are the main characters in episode 10 of season 4 are the people whose careers are on rocket ships taking off right now. Jeremy Allen White is about to be in a Bruce Springsteen biopic. Io Debris is in basically everything these days. She's going to be in a new Julia Roberts movie this fall. And Eben Moss Bachrach is in the MCU. He's going to be a huge part of the MCU. Yeah. And so it's like, these are the actors who like may not be able to come back next season or might have a limited schedule next season. And the season concludes with Carmy saying, I want to leave the restaurant. Now, number one, I actually think I am undecided on whether this is actually an emotionally mature decision from Carmy. I actually feel like on some level it's not, because he's kind of left this trail of destruction in his wake. And
Sid had some good points. It was
Yeah,
like,
Sid has some good points.
What do you mean, asshole? I was definitely on her.
I'm glad she voiced it, and you can have your own decision. Like the viewer will have their own decision on like
Right.
whether or not they thought Carmi was being reasonable.
Felt like
But
Carmi was doing more performative, the right thing, but in
Right.
doing so is actually making a poor decision.
right, exactly. And I think that's what you and I think. But I think it's defensible. Like it's a defensible
for sure. It's
decision.
good drama.
Right. It's a defensible decision. But yeah, they're kind of negotiating like what is going to happen, and that is left undecided. Right. What is the Bear season 5 going to be? Is Carmi going to be in it? I'm just going to say I don't even think Jeremy Allen White is the biggest star amongst. I don't even think he's the second biggest star amongst the three of them right now. You know, in my opinion. I think Io Debris and Eben Moss-Bacharach, like they're probably going to be even more busy than him. So it was actually kind of shocking to me that he's the one they're going to take off the chessboard, potentially. But yeah, Patrick, I kind of want you to elaborate on your idea of like you think this could be what it is. So this meaning, hey, we're just like letting these people hang out and explore relationships a little bit more. Like, what is it about this season that made you feel like, oh, I could see how they could extend this? Whereas you didn't think that about season 2 or 3, let's say, right? Like, is it just like less ambitious formally? You think, like,
I think it's
fewer locations, right? Like,
yeah, I think part of it's less ambitious formally, and then also it's narrowing the scope. Like, I think in the same way that you were talking about, like a new season of The Bear is a reflection of the making of The Bear. I think that even extends to if you're going to do another season, and like again, when FX has announced a next season, it is coming next year. And at no point in that press release is there a mention like, and by the way, like Jeremy Allen White will not be featured. You know what I mean? Like it's just announced like we're getting a new season of The Bear. It'll presumably come next summer in the same way that it has in like the past couple of years. Like they've had a very like regular slow horses like schedule with The Bear, where every year I'm like, this is the one where it's like a year and a half or 2 years later. Nope. It is 1 year later, like clockwork. And so I don't think Carmi's coming off the board. I mean, maybe like there's a push and pull with the restaurant, but I looked at this season as a narrowing of scope. If you want to keep all of these actors in a room, which is where you get the electricity from this show, especially as in some ways, like the scope of the conflicts is going to get like smaller, right? Like they've kind of got a successful, like where is the stuff going to come from that creates conflict between these characters? Like I'm sure they'll invent the reasons, and the incredible cinematography and needle drops all do like some really nice window dressing to sort of kind of distract you from like whatever the like moment to moment crisis is. But I just think it's a narrowing to get everybody back in a room, which allows them to shoot this show in a much more economical way, keeps more people in the space together, because The Bear has a very sort of, you know, especially that final episode, kind of a play-like atmosphere where it's just people on a set. They're not, you know, I have no sense of like how much is improv and how much is like strictly what's on the page. It feels like it's a very on the page show, but that's me just ascribing intent or direction rather than knowing it for sure. But it feels like the show, to keep going without having to announce like the final season of The Bear, is to make it more formulaic, is to get these people more contained into a room. And also, again, it was very cathartic to have all these emotional through lines throughout the season of like multiple characters who have simmering tension, taking that out on one another. But also that tension is what gets them out of a room with one another. And the show is constantly having moments of emotional catharsis where people say things they should have said a long time ago. But also it's reducing some of the tension between them. And it's also giving excuse to have them in the room with one another. So I'm not saying that to be cynical as much as it just feels like part of the formula for making a show with the ingredients that this, you know, that this show has. And I think it's just transforming into a different show. When I say less ambitious, that comes across as derogatory, when I just think it's maybe dealing with the reality of it's either you stop making The Bear or you make a different type of show if you want. And it's more about hanging with these characters than it is about, I don't know, like those giant creative swings that I think defined in a good way those early parts of The Bear. And I can see the show losing some people along the way where it's like, now this feels like, I don't know, more of a normal, you know, kind of sitcom-y show with drama. But I feel like that's where they end up at the end of season 4. But I'm not sure if that came across to you in the same way.
Maybe a little bit. Here's what I'm going to say about what you just said, Patrick, is one of the things I really appreciate about the show is it feels now like it is finally ready to evolve.
Yeah.
And there has been this through line of Carmi and Richie's contentious relationship, right? Of they're always shouting at each other. They have all this unprocessed trauma, and it got real old by season 3. It's like these are grown men still just screaming at each other. This is not the way you deal with problems. I'm bored with this. It's not interesting. Do something else. And that's what they did this season, where Carmi actually has emotional growth. Carmi and Richie actually confront each other and like share truths, hard truths to each other. And it's actually beautiful and edifying. And I like that. And it's like, and not only is it like well done, but I think again, the show is about the making of the show, that the creators of the show liked the screaming dynamic. They're like, oh yes, I get like energy, the kineticism from the screaming, and this is great. And then it's like, and they want to stay in the screaming. They want us, as the characters also wish to stay in the screaming, so do the creators of the show want to stay in the screaming, because it's like there's that kineticism and the energy, and it's hard to move on. It's hard to like do something unfamiliar. What if we evolve these characters to where they're not screaming? What if they actually deal with their trauma and grief? And you end up in a place where you don't know where that is. And is it going to be as good? We don't know. But this show, season 4, was like, I'm going to go to that place. I'm going to try it. And I think it's interesting. It's bold and interesting and moving. And I think they did a good job there. And also, there is a very telling scene between Computer, played by Brian Koppelman, and Sugar, played by Abby Elliott, where he says, hey, you know, your restaurant's losing tons of money and you can barely get this under control. She's like, okay, but if we do XYZ, we're going to be able to get it under control. And then he says, okay, but you're not asking the right question. The right question is not if, it's why. Like, why would you keep doing this? You know, if you're like, and it's okay to not keep doing this.
Why would you keep going?
And I felt like it was the showrunner asking themselves, like, do I want to keep making this show? You know, and then it's very weird to have that, and then also the show is renewed already. So it's like, okay, maybe, you know, but
yeah, well, I imagine you're writing. You know, given the fast turnaround, you'd imagine like creatively, you would think have thought through like what is that pivot. Otherwise, like how else would you be able to produce the show in that sort of span of time? But also to your point, maybe I'm not giving the show enough credit in that it is. Now we'll see what happens next season. Like we'll see where these characters go. I guess there's a world where, hey, you've reduced a lot of the tension between these characters. It's just fundamentally a less interesting show, even if it was repetitive before. Maybe that was the sign that it should have ended after 3 or 4 seasons.
This is also a show that could just this show, if it wanted to, could just focus way less on those 3 characters. It could just be like, hey, this is going to be about Sugar's life now, and that's what the whole show is going to be now. You know, like. This is a show that has precedent for doing that kind of stuff.
So yeah, like, I guess part I was getting at though was that many of the emotional moments, characters talking to one another in this season, feel like that's endgame material for the like. Oh, like this is a show about unresolved tension, about things unsaid, and it begins with things unsaid with a family member who died. And then once they're dead, you can't say it to them. You are stuck in that spot for the rest of your life. And that feels so much of the drama, of the trauma of these characters. And then where we arrive at the end of season 4 is, you have to unpack that and resolve that with the other people in your life and articulate that to them. And like, that's how you arrive at what you feel like you should have said to this person where you never got to say those things. Well, they did all that, or they did a lot of it. And normally, like if this had been announced, like, hey, by the way, like that's what makes me so interested about the future of the show, because at where this season ends feels very much like you could have easily said, and now we're announcing like the final season of The Bear. We've moved these characters into a new place. Now we're going to do sort of an epilogue-y, like farewell season to all these characters. And like, that'll be that. But based on where season 4 ends, based on not announcing as the final season, it very much feels like, well, act 1 of this show has just ended. And act 2 of the show is now going to begin, because we've kind of tabled a lot of the tensions that have driven so much of the drama of the show. And, it's not as though one good cathartic talk, just like one therapy session solves all your ills. But the show is going to be more efficient and expedient about like resolving that stuff just by the nature of storytelling. What is act 2 of the show, which in some ways is like kind of exciting. Like it's a chance for it to maybe not reinvent itself, but it has to introduce new tensions, new drama with these characters, because like a show like, like the Thanksgiving episode, like contrast the Thanksgiving episode with the wedding episode, right? Like those are just like characters who like actively care about each other, working through their problems, whereas the Thanksgiving show is everyone with like knives out, ready to kill each other. What is the next version of like those character dynamics? And I don't know, but I have to admit, I'm interested to see what their vision for those characters are going forward. Because I don't think it's going to be like they abandon. I think this show lives or dies by having like this, like the trio of characters at the end of this in episode 10. That's the show. I know that there are other, like Marcus exists, and I like a lot of the other characters in the show, but I cannot fathom a world where the bear like shifts its primary attention to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right about that. You're saying this is the end of Act 1. There's going to be an Act 2. It's like, to me, this feels like actually like a pretty decent place to close a story. Or as you said, like maybe season 5 is the wrap up and goodbye. I don't know. I do want to talk about another major arc in season 4 that I really appreciated, which is the arc with Carmi's mom. And I'll just say, without going too much into detail, that there are many aspects of my relationship with my mom that I recognize in that dynamic, where my mom was very, very difficult when I was younger. And as I became older, look, she's still very difficult, but she's much more chill now. And it's like, that can happen. Like all of a sudden, like, I'll just say, without elaborating on it too much, because I don't want this to be like a therapy session, but like, I didn't know if I'd have a relationship with my mom when I was an adult, like when we were young. But then something had happened where they like realize the stakes, and then they change. And it does seem like that's what's happened. And yeah, the way it played out was, I thought, very moving. And it's not like, hey, everything's okay, like don't worry about it, it's fine. But nor is it like people need to stay the same and be fixed the whole time, right? Which is what the show has been until now. I think the show has been like,
Yes,
people can't change. It's just these toxic dynamics forever. And this is a show that this is a season that I think pulled us out of that. Similarly with the Claire thing, I appreciated how that played out, right? Where again, season 3 did nothing with that storyline at all. And here it's like, oh, stuff is happening, the situation is changing, and who knows? Like maybe there's actually going to be something that happens between them. We don't know at this point.
Well, their conversation they have outside of her apartment, like on the stoop, I hope I looked at that conversation as a potential preview for what they might do with these characters going forward, like putting aside however long it goes. Like, it could just as easily happen that in 2 months FX announces like, oh, actually, like it's the final season of the right. Like that's definitely. I
actually feel like that's most likely, personally.
That's a very good. That'd also be a good PR move, is like to announce that like closer to anyway. So putting that aside, like how we don't know the scope of the show and whether and how long it might go on, but in that, like, there's a lot of moments in this season which is like characters finally articulating something that has been simmering, and specifically, like, it all starts with like, I'm sorry. And that conversation on outside the apartment, Carmi does apologize. He does, but then Claire responds with, essentially like, an apology isn't like, thank you, that is appreciated, but an apology doesn't buy you penance. Right. Like an apology does not like make what you did before suddenly disappear. And Claire is the only one who really articulates that as an emotional response. She says, I appreciate the apology. That does not change what happened before, but it is necessary, and I appreciate it. Whereas with many of the kind of more therapeutic conversation, especially the one between Carmi and his mother, I'm not saying the show won't pick up on this thread later, but there's a little bit of like, I said I'm sorry, and not that all things are all good, but the characters don't necessarily respond with these sort of like, well, that I do not absolve you of all the harm you have done to me. Whereas Claire is like one of the only characters who stands up is like, nah, like I'm still pretty mad at you, and like sorry is like not enough, but sorry is a beginning. And I think we see versions of I'm sorry as a beginning, and then my question becomes, that does not. It's a step towards like resolving or working through the past, but it does not necessarily absolve or remove the past. And I think that is an interesting place to be, where if you have a bunch of characters who are never able to deal with their demons are now dealing with them.
Yeah.
And that's encapsulated in the final episode, right? Where it's like, you can see Sid's perspective of like, you're doing the quote right thing, but screwing over a lot of people in the process of doing the right thing. And so is that a window into where these characters go next, which is, sure, like you've opened the door to healing, but like healing is also itself a very messy process.
Agreed. And yeah, I was a little bit surprised that the Jamie Lee Curtis stuff did play out in a little bit more calm fashion than I would have predicted, right? Where he wasn't like everything's forgiven, but he was like, I'm going to make a meal for you. And they kind of have this bonding moment over it, which is very nice.
It was nice. They kind of, but they felt like they, like in an RPG, there's if someone casts a silence spell on you, it means you can't cast magic. Been dealing with that a lot in the game Clair Obscure recently, which is very good. And it felt like they set this up earlier in the season, and we're like, we're going to cast a silence spell on Carmi when his mom is around. And so he then has to respond to the entire apology from his mother in his face, right? Like, and there's a lot going on there, and it's like, it's wonderful acting, but it's absent him articulating anything. And so they kind of set up this bit in this season where it's like, he is having kind of almost panic attacks around his mother and is unable to speak properly. That's why at the wedding, like, you know, Richie has to come over and be like, oh, you're like needed in the kitchen.
Right.
And so they set up a situation where
it's a very compassionate moment, I thought. Yeah.
It's a very compassionate moment, but it felt like the show, again, I think I look at that as evidence of the show thinking ahead, which is, we can't do it all here. Like, and like Carmi's going to have his moment with his mother, but that's not going to happen here. We're going to resolve, or at least move the next step of that later. Cause it was a little odd that he couldn't articulate very much except to express himself through cooking, even if that lines up very neatly with how he processes or ignores his emotions.
Yeah. I think my point was just, I expected there to be more of a back and forth about it, you know, because you don't just get over that kind of trauma that quickly, you know, I guess is kind of how I feel, but based on what we've seen. But I did appreciate, again, that they made Jamie Lee Curtis' character into somebody that could change. And that was nice. Cause I think that change is possible in real life as well. People can change over time. And that's something this show is acknowledging. It sounds like you felt similarly to me about the Sid Shapiro restaurant thing. Like, to me, like, I felt like there really needed to be more of a emotional catharsis moment when that decision is made, and then the fallout from that. And instead, it feels like it happens really offhandedly. Like, I don't know that Sid has really grown in any way through this process. In fact, quite the opposite. And that felt a little bit unsatisfying to me. And again, you kind of get a little bit of it comes out in the finale, but like not enough for my taste. But yeah, I wanted to make sure you had a chance to weigh in on that.
When she goes to tour the building being sort of set up, and he talks to her about like hiring staff, and you know, it's like, and I don't want to look, you know, like guys like me, like unless that's what you want. And then the moment that exchange happens, like, oh, they're gonna set him up as like a complete. She's gonna say no, and it's gonna turn out he's like a complete asshole. Like they're clear, like that's the cleanest way they can just snip this entire subplot where they never have to deal with it again. Yeah, and then of course, like that's exactly what happens. Like as soon as they have that kind of, it's like, well, you didn't deserve it anyway. And it's like, all right, but the problem is,
he was an asshole the whole time. Okay,
it's a problem of the show's own making, and yet I agree that like they should have gotten rid of it, and so it was not the cleanest of exits. And yet I also agree with the decision to like find a way to resolve it. I think you and I,
because I thought you had said that the best thing to do would be for her to leave. Like I thought that was
correct, but I don't think the show believes that. I mean, like
so given that the show has the wrong belief that she should stay on, this was the best way to resolve that, which is quickly.
I think the show and its desire to like become a little more constrained and a little more formulaic was going to result in Sid saying no. If the show is going to keep swinging for the fences, I think, you know, you do a little bit more of like painting yourself and, you know, putting yourself in a corner. So what is the show now? Like when, like that is normally would be setting up like a spinoff. Like Sid says goodbye to the show, and then Sid has her own Bear spinoff. And it's like, I just don't think the show could juggle all of that. So they end up finding a way to get her back in there.
Or
So
not
I can see
spin-off,
both sides of it.
Not spin-off, but it would be interesting if they were both like in competition with each other, you know? Like I
Mhm.
think that would actually be an interesting dynamic. All right. So overall, despite our many qualms, we did enjoy the season more. Patrick
Yes.
Klepek, I've asked you to bring your favorite episode of the season to share. Like, what was
Mhm.
your favorite episode of season 4 and why? Yeah, your thoughts.
I don't know. Tonato, is that how I pronounce it? It is the one with episode 9 with Jamie Lee Curtis and Carmi when they have their conversation. I mean, this one is like it's a hard time being objective on, just because part of what I found so cathartic and emotionally resonant in the season was and one, it's like something you just, as you get older, it's like you try and find space to like say the things that you should say, that you're constantly thinking, so you can just articulate that to the people in your life that you care about. And then B, like, you know, I lost my father 13 years ago. Like, we're in very good terms. Like, I want to make clear, in no way should anyone take away from this that I had any sort of the tumultuous relationship with my dad that the people on the show. But, you know, he died suddenly of a heart attack, like in the blink of an eye, out of nowhere, like 6 weeks before I was getting married. And so, you know, many of the, like, the kind of thing you're talking about, like with your mother, is the sort of stuff that really does not happen until you're much older and on like a level, like an emotional, like level playing field with your parents. And so I was in a good place with my dad, but I wasn't in the spot to like speak as a regular person with a sort of maturity and age to have those sorts of conversations like I have with my mom, like regularly now, because like that's just a place you can get eventually. And so, you know, obviously that is a less of a regret as much as like a missed opportunity, like that I didn't get to have that I feel sort of robbed of that. And so in that conversation, for them to have, to me, I looked at it as like, oh, this is sort of the imagined conversation people have, like that I think about, like the ones I never had with my dad, because there was just never an opportunity for us to be in a place where we could have had them. And that here, Carmi gets to have that with his mother, or his mother, you know, like the reverse, gets to have that with him. And I thought that was just really beautiful, like between the two of them, and showed a lot of like really interesting emotional maturity. And I found that to be just very resonant as in a season about like seize the moment to say the thing that you should have said before it passes you by, because you lose the confidence, or in the case of like someone dying, like you just are robbed of the opportunity. I found stuff like that to be just like really powerful. And Jamie Lee Curtis just continues to be just what, like, she's not in the show all that often, but man, she just makes a meal of like everything that she's in, and plays a very complicated character that is able to express a lot of layers with very limited time on the show relative to everybody else.
Yeah. Beautifully said, Patrick. Thank you for sharing that. So Patrick's favorite episode this season, episode 9, Tonato. And yeah, a lot of long continuous takes. Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
This show is, by the way, incredibly unflattering in how it films its actors. It's like you can see the makeup, like it's up close and super sharp in the filming, and but it to great effect in that episode specifically, I would say. My favorite episode of season 4 of The Bear is episode 4, Worms. This is the one that's actually written by Ayo Edebiri and Lionel Boyce, who are actors in the show itself. And Daniel...
Oh, Marcus co-wrote the episode?
Yeah.
That's sick.
And Daniel Detweiler shows up in the show. Daniel Detweiler, who has had, I would say, an extremely diverse filmography. She's in 40 Acres right now in theaters. She played the mother in Till, which is an incredible performance. And she also played, I believe, a cop in the Taron Egerton action film Carry On Netflix, which is a really fun movie. But anyway, Daniel Detweiler shows up as Ayo Edebiri, aka Sid's friend, in this episode. There's a really insightful moment towards the beginning of the episode where she does like this code switching when she gets a call from her potential client, that I thought was really well done by Daniel Detweiler. And then what's cool is then Sid ends up hanging with Daniel Detweiler's character's kid, and chatting about her feelings about her current situation through that. And I just thought that was a really fun and unique and insightful way of exploring Sid's mindset. Again, all this stuff in the lead up to the Sid decision I thought was, there's a lot of it. Some of it was good.
This almost made it worth it, but I mean, obviously, it's halfway through the season. We could have wrapped it up in episode 5, as a result of this.
100%. It's like
when she does the convoluted metaphor, trying to explain, like when they're talking about this, like working through the child's decision over the sleepover, and then she's trying to explain like what's happening, like in the restaurant through convoluted. Like it was so, and those are scenes like that where I would be deeply curious to wonder how much is riffing and how much is just on the page, because it feels so naturalistic that it really does feel like Io is just riffing, and like that. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, but I thought that was great, and you're right. I mean, it is episode 4, and the thing is not freaking resolved until like episode 8, 9 time period. It's like, okay, really? Like this feels like the thing you make right before she makes a decision. Yes. And then of course her dad has the heart attack, and it's like, oh, they're just trying to drag this out. It felt like, but anyway, putting all that aside, it was a great episode. And it makes Hamburger Helper look amazing, which I think is really impressive as well.
Yeah, I wanted to eat that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just like, oh, what a cool way of like. The other thing is one of the Bear's great strengths is it shows you, hey, all these people have lives. I used to work in a restaurant, right? My dad used to manage and own a Chinese restaurant, and we'd have a dozen workers that were Chinese immigrants, basically. And I'd always be like, what are these people's lives like? And because they all have like full lives and people they are doing this for and people they love and all these, and I don't have any access to any of that. And this show gives you access to people's lives. It's like, hey, if you take a different slice of this person's life, it's unrecognizable from the person who they are when they're at work. And I appreciated that. That's what this episode did. Episode 4, Worms, my favorite episode of season 4 of The Bear. So
it feels like the show, when it does those episodes, it knows how good it can be. And there's you almost get the sense sometimes like they wish they could be more of an anthology,
right?
Like anthology with a cast of characters, but that what puts butts in seats? Well, it's like Carmi and Richie yelling at each other,
arguing.
But the soul of the show is like we give you enough of a window into these characters that we can go and explore their inner, because those are constantly the one-offs about, not that the conflicts in the restaurant aren't interesting, but like there's a reason like these one-offs about the characters. So they both greatly inform those moments, but it also feels like the show being like, all right, okay, if we get like 60% more yelling, we can go do an episode where like it's about Hamburger Helper for 45 minutes and like people will keep watching. Because that is definitely like when moments like that are just such a treat. And it's cool. It's incredibly cool that the show, it's so much Christopher Storer, right? Like his name is plastered everywhere. It's very much clearly like part of his vision, but like over the show's runtime, like they have done a good job of incorporating like creatives on the show to like contribute, and like seeing that reflected here. And like, I don't think Christopher Storer could have written that episode, right? Like, it would be a very different, it feels very authentic in a way that Christopher Storer probably have a harder time capturing. And part of the reason it works is because of like the people who, like, it's all Black creatives that like wrote and directed it. And like, you see that in the episode in a way that is really cool.
Absolutely. All right. So overall, we're fans of season 4. You're a bit of a bigger fan than me, and I think you're looking forward to what's coming next more than I am.
I'm all in. Like season 5, end of season 3. I was like, I think we need to announce the final season of this show. That might get me in.
Yeah.
Season 4, I cannot wait for season 5.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.